What you guys, in this video we're taking a look at how to make the switch from Windows to Linux. I'm going to show you how to install Linux onto a real machine so you can see how it's done. It's pretty straightforward. We're going to do a basic install here. So first off, let's choose our distro. We can choose ZorinOS, Pop! OS. These are really good entry-level sort of beginner type distros to use. We've got Mint, Linux Mint you can download for free as well. We've also got Ubuntu, which is another type of distro that you can use and run on your system, and Elementary OS. Either one of these will do you just fine for the beginner who wants to get started with Linux. We're going to be doing ZorinOS because that's what I did yesterday and everyone seemed to like it. So we're going to go ahead and show you how to install this properly onto a proper computer so you can see it in full swing, how to do it on a real PC. So first off, we're going to go down and download the core version, which is the free version. They do actually have a pro version which gives you a lot of pre-installed software, which might be a good choice for people that are not familiar with Linux, but I'll show you how to do all this anyway. So let's go ahead and download the ZorinOS 16 core version and get this ready for our installation. So I've got a USB flash drive plugged into my computer, as you can see here, and what I'm going to do is prep this USB flash drive ready for installing Linux on a PC. So let's go ahead and do that. So I've got my ISO here, which I've downloaded, which is the ZorinOS 16 core. We're going to need something to create our bootable media. So I'm going to use Rufus here. I'm going to download the portable version. So let's go ahead and download that on our system. You're going to need a PC to create this bootable media. So I'm going to open up Rufus here. I'm using Windows 11 on this system. So I'm going to open up Rufus, and this will give us the option to create our bootable USB flash drive. So as you can see, it's detected the drive here. Make sure you are using the right drive before you create any sort of drive, because if you select the wrong drive, it will wipe it. So we're going to be using our USB flash drive, which I've selected here. Next up, we're going to need to choose our ISO image. So click select and choose your ZorinOS. You can see it selected here. We haven't got to worry about the other settings up here. Next is the partition scheme. You can leave this on MBR. This also is good for BIOS and UEFI. So basically, whether you've got an older system or a newer system, that selection is good. We're going to open up the advanced here and put a tick in this little box here which says add fix for old BIOSes. This is great for old legacy PCs, older types of PCs that could have an issue. Put a tick in there and that should resolve any sort of problems if you're installing this on an older system. We've got the volume label. I'm just going to leave that as is. I'm leaving this as FAT32, and we can leave the cluster size on 32 kilobytes. That's good enough for us. So let's go ahead and put 32 kilobytes inside here, and FAT32 is what I'm going to select. So let me go ahead and select this one over here. This is the minimum size. Just go 32. That's good, and click start. And that will then start to format the drive and get it ready. You can see here it wants to write the ISO image mode recommended, and it wants to choose this option. So I'm going to say OK, and it's now going to say the image uses syslinux, and that's all OK. I'm going to say yes here and let that continue. So you can read all that if you wish. I'm going to select yes. So let's go ahead and click yes and move on to the next stage. So it's downloading the files it needs, and you can see here it's going to warn you about wiping all the data on that drive. If you have data on it, then back out right now, because it is going to format it and wipe all the data off of that drive. It's now going to prep the drive and get it all ready with our choice of Linux, which we chose. I chose ZorinOS. So it's just going to copy all of the files from the ISO image to the USB flash drive and get this ready for our installation. So let's go ahead and copy these across. I'll speed this process up so it doesn't bore you, and we'll get to the end of the process here. So there we go. So now we've completed this drive and it's ready to go. So here we are on our PC. So we're going to be moving from this Windows-based system to Linux, and it's pretty easy. A lot of people panic, but it's nothing to worry about as long as all your data is backed up on this computer, because we will be wiping it. Hold the left shift key down and restart the PC, just as you can see I'm doing here. And this will restart the PC, and you should see a blue screen saying choose an option. We're going to be choosing the troubleshoot option. So go ahead and click on troubleshoot and move on to the next stage. So reset this PC and advanced options, click advanced options, and then we want the UEFI firmware. So click on this one here, and this will restart the system and take us back into the UEFI settings because this is a new computer. If you're using an older type computer, you need to get into the BIOS. You can do this normally by tapping the delete key and restart the PC and keep tapping the delete key, and this will take you into the BIOS. So the BIOS will load up just something like this. I will zoom in so you can see, go to the advanced settings, and what we're going to do here is we're going to go inside here, Windows operating system configuration, and we're going to turn off all of this secure boot. We don't need this. So I'm going to turn all this off. And we're also going to delete all of the secure boot records here. So we're going to say yes to this and delete this. I should have captured this screen rather than recording it, but it's okay. You should be able to see it. I've captured the whole installation, which is a lot clearer, so it should be better. So once it's restarted, we're going to go back into settings and go back into our options available here for us, Windows operating system configuration. And we're going to change this from UEFI to CSM. And this is because we want to select this option for ourselves. And we should be done and save and exit here. So we can now save and exit this option. So what I'm going to do here is click on F10 and save these. So we should see legacy in UEFI set here. And we need to now change the boot order to our USB flash drive. Our USB flash drive is going to be USB CD/DVD. So I'm going to select this one here. And we can now select F10 and save our settings, and then the system will restart and boot to a USB flash drive. So let's go ahead and do that right now and restart the system. So I'm going to get my USB flash drive, which I've just created, plug that into the machine. And basically, once we've got this plugged into machine, I can save these settings and reboot the PC. So this is basically the way you would go about doing this. And I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible for people that are new to computers or new to Linux. So F10, click yes to save these settings, and this will then reboot the PC, and you'll see something like this when it boots up. So at this stage, we haven't installed Linux. We can now go ahead and try ZorinOS or try Linux Mint or any other version that you've chosen, and this will give you the option to have a look at it to see whether you like that distro. So let's go ahead and click on try ZorinOS first. Now, this is what we call a live environment when it boots up to here. So it's not actually installed over Windows yet. So if you wanted to revert back, all you need to do is shut down the PC, take the USB flash drive out, and basically put your BIOS settings back, and it will boot back into Windows. But at this stage, it gives you the option to have a good look around at the operating system of what it's going to look like. Once you're happy with it and you want to then continue to install ZorinOS, you can click on the Install ZorinOS up the top left-hand side. This will be the same for any other distro that you use. You can actually install it this way. So it's always a good way to have a good look around first to make sure it's exactly what you want. So we've clicked on Install ZorinOS, and now we can see Welcome page. We can choose our language. I'm going to choose English, and I'm going to choose English UK. You can choose whatever language you want, and we can click Continue. This will continue the installation process. It now says download and update while installing ZorinOS. I want to do that, and I want to install the third-party software as well for graphics and all those other good stuff. So put tick in here and click Continue. So let this do its thing, and it will then suddenly populate another window, which is where we can now choose what we want to do with the installation. So installation type, here we go. So if you look here, it says install ZorinOS alongside Windows Boot Manager. That means you'll be dual booting it. I don't want to dual boot. I want to completely erase the disk and install ZorinOS. This is how you can do it here. Now, if you're a little bit more advanced, you can go down to the advanced features, or you can go down to something else and basically create your own partitions and basically install ZorinOS that way. That is for more advanced people. I'm not going to be doing that in this video because I'm trying to make it as simple as possible for Windows users to come over from Windows to basically Linux. So let's click OK here. And what we're going to do is leave this to erase disk and install ZorinOS. So this is for the advanced option here. We're not going to go through that. So we've got our selection, and now click continue, and it will ask you to select the drive you want to install ZorinOS on. And this is where you're going to select the drive which you want to use. So I'm going to select this one down here, which is the 480 gigabyte SSD drive. I'm going to install it onto this one. The other one is a mechanical drive, and that's now selected. Once you've got your drive you want to install it on, make sure you choose the right one, because it will erase all the data on that drive. So that's important. Once we've got that done, we can now click on install now. What this is going to do is completely wipe all of the drive and prepare it all for us and do all the hard work. So we're going to click install now. You can see here the entire disk will be used. So click install. And once that's done, it's going to give you another little pop-up just to say this is what's going to happen and what changes are going to be happening. So click continue, and it will then go ahead and ask you where you are. And I'm going to say London, and basically I need to put in some details. This is my username and accounts and everything else, so I'm going to be putting in some details here. You would obviously put in your name and your details. The computer name is going to be exactly what it's made there, and you need to give it a password. I'm just going to give it a quick password here. Now you can log in automatically if you wish, or you can require password every time you log in. I would leave it as require password every time you log in. Then click continue, and I'll speed this process up. This is now copying all the files over and getting it ready to install. So I'll quickly speed this up so it doesn't waste your time. And then once this is done, which doesn't take too long at all, you should see installation is completed. We can now restart the system and boot up for the very first time. So let's go ahead and click on restart now. And this will then restart the system. You'll get a prompt to tell you to remove the flash drive from the PC. So I'm going to remove that out. And then it will then reboot the system. You should see the Zorin logo coming up, and that means we've got a successful install here. And yours might be Linux Mint or whatever version you chose. You now see your username here. You can click on this and put in the password that you chose to log in. And there we are. We're now going to be getting the desktop of ZorinOS. And that's it. It's not as difficult as people make out. It's pretty straightforward. This is probably the most basic way and easiest way to get from Windows to Linux. It's very, very simple and easy to do. So we have our menu system here. I'm just going to go through some of the questions that people had about ZorinOS and also about probably Linux. You've got your settings here. So this is very, it looks like Windows, but it is actually Linux. And you can now see all of your features here, your refresh rate for your monitor. It's all been done. So your graphics drivers on a new PC should be automatically loaded in on this version. So you shouldn't have to worry about that. If you've got a printer, you can add your printer and go ahead and have a little play around. This is your main system. If it doesn't work out for you, you can always format the drive and install Windows again if that's what you want to do. So as you can see here, we've got the appearance. You can change the appearance here. You see this in another video. I'm not going to spend too much time on here. This is just changing the way your taskbar is laid out and all that sort of stuff. If you've paid the Pro version, you'll get a few extra ones here. It's just updating the software. You can see this happens automatically. So this is going to be happening in the background, and we can install these now. Might as well do this just to show you how. And again, once this is all done, you can then move on to choosing your software that you want to install. Now, some of the questions I got yesterday in the comment section, it was quite good because I got quite a lot of feedback from that video, which was good. And a lot of people were asking, some of the most common questions is, can I install my Windows apps on Linux? Can I play games on Linux? So I'll try my best to answer those for you. It's not that simple to answer all of your questions because obviously this will be a very long video, but I'll do my best. So gaming, as I said before, you can play games on Linux. There's quite a lot of games to choose from. What I would advise you to do is basically check to see whether your game is on the playable list. If it's not, then you can't play that game. It's that simple. Now, Linux has come on leaps and bounds when it comes to gameplay, and you can play quite a lot of games on here. You can install Steam and play games through Steam. You can play Counter-Strike Global Offensive and all these types of games as well. They run perfectly fine, but there is some games that don't work very well, and I'll go through that in a little bit later in the video. So as you can see here, quite a long list of games. Now there's a few ways of installing your software. You can either open up the start button here and basically go to the software section and then start to install software from there. And I'll show you how to do that quickly. So let's go into the software section here and we'll download some programs here. So let's go in here. So inside here, you can click and install these programs on this operating system. You don't have to go to the browser. You can install them here. You can do updates from here. You can install them from here. So I can click on this and just basically put my password in for my account, and it will then go ahead and install it on the system. All of these will work and they're free to use, as you can see here. So that's going to work pretty fine for you. Now, if you want to do Steam, you can either search for Steam inside here, or you can go to the Steam's website and download it from there. So you can download some software from the websites. If you find one there for Linux, you can install it from there. But it's best to use the package manager there to install all of your software. It's a lot easier. But you can see here, I can install Steam straight from here. I'm going to put my password in again. Now, the reason why you have to do a lot of these passwords is you can take that feature off, but it's best to leave it on because it's a lot more protection. So let's talk about some of the games you can play and some of the games you can't. So you can go over to this website. I'll leave the link in the video description. It will tell you which games run on Linux and which games don't. So there is going to be some games you can't play, unfortunately, and they may be a bit of a problem. But to be honest, you have to do your own research because I don't know what games you're playing. There's tons and tons of games out there. You can see these games all play perfectly fine, but you're going to come across the odd game that doesn't play, and that's just the way Linux is. So, for instance, PUBG's Unknown Battlegrounds, Apex Legends, they don't work. Why don't they work? The reason why they don't work is because the anti-cheat that they use, and it just doesn't work with Linux, and that's the reason why the game won't load and won't work properly a lot of the time. So do your research, check it out and find out what games you want to play and whether they're playable on Linux. That's all there is to say about it. Next up, if you want to install Windows programs, which is another question people had, you can install Wine and run Windows programs on Linux. I'll show you how to quickly do this. I'm going to install Wine here in the software section here. And once that's installed, I'm going to go over and I'm going to install Photoshop. Now, this is not going to be turning into how to install Photoshop on Linux. That's another video. But basically, this is basically what you would do if you want to install Windows programs on Linux. You can do this, or you can install a virtual machine or whatever it is you want to do to get your applications to run inside Linux. But you can see here, this is ZorinOS, and I've got Photoshop CS2, and it's running on Linux itself. I've got it installed on here and it's running perfectly fine, as you can see. No problems at all. So there you go, you got Photoshop. But there is other applications that Linux has which you can use rather than using Photoshop. You've got GIMP and a bunch of other software. And this is what you're going to have to expect if you are transitioning from Windows to Linux. It's a complete different operating system, and it's just some things that are not going to work on Linux and work on Windows. It's just the way it is. But that's basically about it. So if you want to install Linux onto a Windows-based system, that's the basic way of doing it and getting up and running on Linux, which means you can continue to use your older PC. This is a pretty new PC. In fact, it's brand new, but that's basically how you do it. Now, we'll say this important bit of information, which I think a lot of people seem to miss, that if you are jumping ship from Windows to Linux, then embrace Linux for what it is and try to use Linux for what it is instead of trying to use Windows inside of Linux. It really isn't designed for that. Just try to embrace it and just try to leave Windows behind if you're going to make that leap of faith to Linux. That's all I can say. There is plenty of good programs on Linux that you can use in replacement for Windows, but if you're trying to keep one foot in Windows and be on Linux at the same time, it's not going to be an enjoyable experience for you. And that is just my honest opinion. I think Linux is a great operating system. It's a really good operating system for people that want to embrace it. Now, one thing you have to remember is Linux and Windows is Windows. And I know some people want to take their software that they've been using for many years on Windows over to Linux. And unfortunately, that is not always possible. Some programs do work and you can get them working using Wine. But just remember, Linux is a completely different operating system to Windows. What I would say is if you're going to do that, there's plenty of other options out there that will replace that software and learn a new piece of software with Linux, because you are literally leaving Windows behind and you need to really sort of grasp Linux for what it is, and that will make your transition a lot more easier and better for you. Also, for people that think I hate on Linux, I love all operating systems. I love anything to do with technology, so please try and keep your comments respectable in the comments section. Anyway, with that said, my name has been Brian from briteccomputers.co.uk. A big shout out to all my YouTube members who have joined my YouTube members group. I really do appreciate the support. I hope this video has been some sort of use to you. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comment section below or join our Discord server. I shall see you again for another video real soon. Bye for now.